Hello everyone, my name is Jorge Vigara. I have 15 years of experience, more or less, in the animation film industry. I worked in movies such as Despicable Me, Hotel Transylvania, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, S'mores 2, and a few more. I'm also the founder and one of the instructors at Animawarriors.com. We are a very small and new online school that we opened last year, and we're basically centered in teaching everything about 3D animation, focused mainly on creativity and the beautiful artistic aspects of the animation. Yeah, let's just start to talk about this fantastic shot from Julien Ferritto, the winner of this last month challenge. Thank you very much. I'd like to say also to Anim Challenge people, it's been fantastic for letting us being part of this challenge as a school, and thank you everybody in the that has used the toy rig, which is our first school rig. We put a lot of it, so it's very nice to see how people come with different ideas and all that come into life. So let's have a look to the shot and let's start talking about it. I love it. I love it so much. I have to say that I've watched this shot many times. I have to say it's not the first time that I watch it. I try to do my best to stay fresh, but somehow I watched it before, and I continue watching it a lot of times. So when you reach that stage of of just watching a shot just for the sake of enjoyment, I think that tells a lot. I think there is already probably 95% of what we are looking for as animators is done, right? Because I'm basically just capture, entertain, I'm having fun, I'm liking it, what I'm seeing it, and I'm continually watching it. So again, my congratulations to Julien for reaching that sense of fun, sense of entertainment, because I said at the end, no matter how much far you go applying techniques, no matter how far you go and being very careful and maybe very picky and cleaning things up or doing like a very high performance polish, at the end what matters is what are you telling, if we understand what are you telling, and if what are you telling is captivating enough. And I think that both things, Julien, you already have done it. We understand very clearly what you are telling. Not only that, I think that you found an idea that many animators can relate to. When we are working in a production, and sometimes the days are long, and we're waiting for production meetings to happen or feedback meetings, or we're waiting to get our shot done and to get an approval so we can continue working on other stuff. And that's something that we can see here, right? And when it happens, nice, let's keep going, or we are happy, right? It's that kind of healthy pride, or that kind of healthy creative satisfaction, and let's say arouses, and makes us feel very, very good. And so that part of the storytelling is very well done. So good job. And the way it's been done has been fantastic. Like in terms of, let's say, the ideas that you have throughout, let's say, the whole piece is fun and entertaining. Again, in my opinion, actually, if you ask me, is one of the things more difficult to tell. I think that animators, for some good amount of time when we are learning and when we are improving, we put a lot of time in making something good, you know, and making sure that what we are doing reaches the, let's say, the standards, the quality standards of the industry, and which is not bad overall when we are attempting or we are trying to be professionals and be part of the industry. But sometimes we give too much weight to that and we forget about the artistic process itself and the creative aspect itself and the fun and the actual process of enjoying the process. And when we have fun and when we are entertained doing our shots is when most of the time, in my experience and in my understanding, is when we get good stuff and when people like our job. And I would say I'm not 100% sure, but I would say that you had a good time doing this shot. And I think that that's probably one of the, as I was saying, one of the most difficult things to as I can see when I'm working with other people that is learning animation, is one of the things that takes more time to somebody to pay more attention to how much are you having and how much are you enjoying your shot before paying more attention to quality and becoming a professional and So that being said, the shot, storytelling, and the quality of entertainment is fantastic. My suggestions and my tips and my notes would go a little bit in the line of, maybe highlighting some poses or maybe doing better poses that can push maybe a little more further that entertainment value, and maybe that is storytelling. But again, I would say that what you've done is already fantastic. So let's go little by little, part by part, breaking down a little bit your piece and see what we can see how we can improve this. So talking about camera layout, staging, I think overall is very clear, fantastic. I think you have very powerful ideas. Storytelling. This part is very easily understood. In terms of camera, I would have suggested maybe to tweak this shot a little bit better. So maybe finding a way to create lines and harmony that is a little more clear of what, that send us a little more clear to what we need to see. It took me a little bit to read, and I will talk a little bit more about posing in general. It took me a little bit to read this particular pose, probably because the quick and let's say the rough lighting that you have done, probably by using Viewport 2.0. So before talking about how would I have, let's say, or recommendations about posing in general, I would recommend a couple of things in composition, camera and staging. So probably I would have suggest something that falls a little bit better in the role of thirds, which is a basic, but sometimes it helps a lot. I think it would be interesting to know that, or to see the face mostly somewhere around falling into that rule of thirds. So probably I would have maybe brought the whole shot or the whole pose, having this guy falling, maybe if we do the rule of thirds, roughly, more or less. We can see that this guy's, the face itself is a little, it's centered, but since we have, let's say, these points of contrast and high, let's say, highlight there are other screens in this point here, I would probably have help ourselves bringing the attention of the face to probably this point. So probably I would maybe have given a little bit more of clarity on those lines, maybe having those two screens with maybe a little bit more of, let's say, exaggerated perspective, pushing a little bit more that those lines of the screens, bringing those lines here towards the face of the character, maybe here. Let me change the color. And definitely maybe pushing a little bit more that, let's say, that pose. Probably I would say, I know that even though that this pose is fun, it's a little probably too wide. Maybe we don't need to go, let's say, that far in terms of actually we see a little bit of the feet there that also have like a very bright color, so it's probably, you are probably adding some details, points of contrast, bright lights and bright shapes to the frame that are a little too close to, let's say, the to the safe frame that actually we don't need. So that's why I would probably have suggested to have maybe a pose that centers a little bit more that, let's say, that that face, so we would see a little more clearly the face of that boredom, or that kind of like maybe also being tired, waiting for the approval to arrive. So I would would recommend to have maybe, yeah, something more like that, more like a clear, closer frame into that. Again, making sure that our face plus our screens falls a little bit into that rule of thirds. Also making sure that the lines that we have send us towards this particular face. Maybe also, you can see that here you have these lines here that are a little, let's say, it's not adding anything. My recommendation usually is that think very well about the lines that you are creating always in your shot and in your composition. So these lines here is not adding not necessarily anything. Again, it's being like a prop that is a little too close to, let's say, the end of that, or very close to the safe frame. So you could have had maybe this idea of, let's say, of having like a shelf, but maybe in a different way, maybe having that shelf maybe over here, where you can maybe frame it a little better and sending those guys, but still it's a little not really helping. So probably I would have suggested to remove that shelf and making it more clear, more clean. Though there is something that I like from this particular staging itself, which is the loneliness of the remote worker, which maybe is where you were attempting to go. If that was the case, then I would have suggested to maybe give us more space so we could understand a little bit more of that, let's say, loneliness, creating a little bit more of that emptiness. So probably, if this is your frame, maybe you could have definitely have pushed the idea of having those screens here. Again, pushing the idea of, let's say, of having the lines towards the character. Again, always considering those rule of thirds. So maybe everything that you wanted to tell is within that rule of thirds. So probably actually I would have pushed those lines, or that, let's say, having the desk here and having the character only the whole character and then the full body character sitting. Oh my god, I'm so lonely. So we could get like a very clear, what, 2 monitors here, 1 and 2, with the desk, and then lots of empty space around. So we create that sensation. So I would go either 2 ways. I think that you're a little bit in between 2 worlds. Again, depends in what's the idea, what you want to tell in terms of priorities. If you want to focus, let's say, or make sure that you want to tell that that kind of boredom or desperation or tiredness, I would definitely would have gone for a tighter shot where everything is going towards the face so we can see that face. Or if you want to push and tell a little bit more of that kind of like loneliness, working from home remotely, waiting for something beautiful to happen, like for example my shot getting approved, I would have gone in this direction, making it more broader and probably pushing a little bit more of that emptiness of the frame in general. The way it lives is fantastic too. And all these ideas actually, I think, in terms of layout and camera and staging, super nice, easy, clear to understand. And finishing with coming back to where we started. I just like the mambo. Just really like that mambo sound and the mambo music. So that being said, talking a little bit about posing in general, actually I think that more specifically about the animation, I think that my main notes would be on posing, because also I can see that in terms of polishing, I think that the kind of style that you went for, it was more about nice, fun poses, lots of graphic humor, not giving so much importance to the polishing in general. So that's why I would comment only on poses and how you can maybe get a little bit more out of those poses, so we can get your ideas more clearly and maybe a little bit more fun. So starting from this particular pose, without taking in consideration what I already mentioned, because again I would have considered change the staging in one of those 2 directions that I mentioned. In this one, I think it's fantastic what you've done here, though. You have some things here that are a little bit, let's say, dirty, that I would consider to clean up and make it a little more clean. You know, that also helps with appeal. We don't read too well what is happening here, also probably because of the choices of your lighting and all that. So we don't really read too much this position here. So I would probably have gone very close to what you already have in terms of reading the whole thing. But I would probably have tried to find something that is a little more clean, making this line of action a little bit more continuous, and making sure that we can read that, let's see, that seated position. I don't see the point of really seeing the feet down there, because again, it's adding a point of, let's say, of contrast that is not helping us. Probably actually is grabbing too much the attention, so I would have done that a little more clean. And maybe I would have done this a little more clean in terms of shoulders. I like the idea of having those shoulders up, but I think that since you have that neck stretch, I would have done probably the whole, let's say, this whole line a little more clean. Probably would have helped a little more with appeal, and you would have helped the eye to read it a little better. Definitely clean a little more this hand. Trying to keep curves and lines cleans. It feels, you know, too much complexity, lots of lines here with the fingers. So I would have gone for, you know, just maybe a very simple, let's say, resting hand where all the fingers are in harmony, and is, let's say, it passes, we can ignore it easily. The one probably that I would suggest to also improve a little bit is the face. I can see that you have changed a little bit in the texture of the color of the nose. Nothing bad about it, but we lose it, right? We lose it, so it makes it a little bit difficult to read. So I would have make sure that somehow we could have read that nose, and I'll probably have pushed a little bit more that sense of maybe of boredom, maybe just bringing a little bit more of fallen eyes, maybe pushing a little bit more with that, let's say with not less so neutral brows, probably. This feels very nice. So the point also would be that to have to do something that is very clear, because this is the first frame that we see from your shot, right? So the first, let's say, shot or the first face, in my opinion, is always very, very important because it's the one that creates the first impression. So that's why I would have gone all the way in to create like a very fun and a very interesting and appealing face from the very beginning, from the very first frame. So I would have pushed that a little bit. Maybe actually I would suggest it to make maybe do the face a little bit bigger, or the head a little bit bigger. I'm a big fan of doing bigger heads sometimes, so we could read the whole thing a little bit better. Definitely, again, coming back to what I mentioned before about staging and all that, making sure that lines would have directed everything towards that face, right? So we would just, the moment that we start seeing the shot, we would go straight into that face. So that would be the main thing in this particular shot, probably. How it lives is fantastic. I really like that. We don't really read too much that. I can see that you have done kind of like a, now that I see this frame by frame, kind of like a twister movement there. We don't really read it too well, unfortunately. This is probably because you put a good amount of time doing that. Probably because of the lighting itself and that motion blur. That's why sometimes I don't like to do motion blurs, because sometimes when we do something that is too cartoony and we add motion blur on top of things, we lose some of those details. So I would probably have suggested to maybe have some of those breakdowns or key breakdowns a little more clear so we can read that. Like for example, definitely the anticipation, I would have gone maybe, you have done that stretch, having the, say, having like a fun thing. I would have definitely have pushed a little bit more that fun anticipation of, okay, getting ready to leave. And then probably as I would start going into that kind of like twist in there, I would have gone to something, I would make more clear those breakdowns that tells more clearly that. This, for example, is clear enough, but since it's going into shadows, we don't really see that. So that's one of the issues probably that we have sometimes when we are lighting at the same time we are animating. My default recommendation is to not light shots where if you are not 100% a professional lighter, because a not well done lighting sometimes goes against the animations that we've done. And this is a clear example of what is happening here. This face is going into a completely darkness, right? So we are missing, let's say, the first few breakdowns or first few frames of that, because basically we don't read it, we don't see it, right? And it's a shame, because I can see that here you have put a good amount of time in creating that nice trajectory, but we don't read it, right? So I would pay attention to that. So this is not actually about the posing itself. It's about how you have supported your animation with that particular lighting. This particular breakdown reads pretty well. Probably I would have used in the next few frames something like my hands, for example, or the legs, that would help us to actually create that shape in a way more clear way. If you have used, for example, the hands that are way more bright and more flexible to do, for example, those poses where we can see clearly that kind of like trajectories, it would have been a little more easy to understand, you know, because we are coming this way. This axle is coming here, so probably here you could have used the leg to read a little bit of that. Because here, this is where you're going, right? So this would have helped, boop. Kind of like more or less of what have you done, but in this frame, but starting it from before, because we don't read it. And again, continue making sure that everything is easy to read, making sure that all the shapes that you're creating are clean, are nice, easy to read in just a quick glance. And again, probably the same thing with full leg, very easy, super nice. And what I mean by clean shape, I mean like a real clean shape, where you basically imagine that you are drawing maybe of the leg like that. So we would have seen that leaving out the frame. Very nice, those lines here helping us to read that. This particular one is super fun. In order to have supported the idea of the character turning around in this particular one, sometimes the eye sometimes is fantastic. The eye of the viewer just mix it up, and let's say he fills the gaps of what we probably of the information we don't actually have in the frame. So it's amazing how just having one frame, one side, the eye of the viewer fills the gap, making us understand that the turnaround is happening. But I would have supported that a little bit with something visual, with maybe kind of like the same ideas that you have here in the chair. These guys, I would have done that a little bit in this particular turn. So I would have added something there, or maybe just a simple smear of a hand, or something that helps us to read that we have that turn around going on. Fantastic. Basic or normal cleanup notes, I would have suggested definitely to clean that up, making sure we don't see that. Would also have suggested to probably not covering this eye with that particular, with the nose itself. So you could have done something like that. Maybe pushing a little bit more that peel bringing that mouth a little higher. And Tariq also, just because I've been working with this character with so many years, right? I know how to get good appeal. You could have got a little bit of good appeal if you have add a little bit of cheek, just a little bit. This part works pretty nice. I really like the flow in general, the dynamism, that sense of movement, super nice with that change at the same time of lights and colors. Beautiful, beautiful. I would have suggested maybe to not have gone so, let's say, curvy in this particular pose. It's also because it's nice to have sometimes of moments of contrast. You have a lot of curving moments of the animation, so it would be nice to, you know, find a little bit of those moments of equilibrium where we do straight lines, harsh, let's say, angles versus some curves and all that. So you have done a good amount of curves here, so that's why, boom. If you have gone for something, even maybe I would suggest maybe just push it for something that is a little bit more angled, like super angled for that particular pose. Maybe that would have been fun as well. Something like in this line as well. So you have a little bit of that. And then here you go back to that kind of like curviness. Beautiful way it goes up. I really like this string on the stick. I would have gone for a little bit probably more of clarity in that hand. We don't actually, it took me a few times to really read this string effect, so I would probably have pushed a little bit this pose in a way that we can read that string, making sure probably having worked with a way more simple fist, say, fist pose. Nothing that necessarily needs to fall down into something that is realistic, but something that will help us to read a little better what is happening here. And maybe stretching a little bit those legs. Again, maybe making the head a little bit bigger. When overall with cartoony animation, I recommend to always do bigger faces so we can really see the face nice and clean. Of course, when we are doing an acting and when we're doing a performance, making sure that we're paying attention to the face and we always see the face, and the face is the center of, or focus is key, of course. But even in dynamic action shots, face tells a lot, and face is very important. And even there, the audience is always looking for the face. So I would have gone to try to find something more fun, more clear to see, more appealing in that face, even though that the focus is, let's say, the dynamic movement of the whole, let's say, of the whole shot. So I would have gone a little bit in that direction. This is beautiful. I really like those little details, effects. I don't know if it's a French thing or not, but I found that all the French people, they really know how to work very well with effects, with these kind of things. Beautiful. And this is a very nice detail, how the same, let's say, dust becomes the clouds and the guy coming flying towards camera. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. This is fantastic. Composition here is very nice. I would have pushed this a little bit more, so we could have read in terms of staging. a little bit better. So we could have read probably maybe the hand here and maybe tiny little legs coming down here. Yeah. It's okay if for that particular moment you would have reached, you would cut a little bit the hair, but that would probably would have helped a little bit, just to feel more those, let's say, the emptiness. Again, making sure that also you fall a little bit into the rule of thirds and all that. And in terms of posing, I think is very good. It's very nice. Again, probably making the character a little bit longer, you would have helped us to read a little bit more clearly. Hand, making sure that we have like a hand coming down. Tiny little hand. And again, maybe with pointy and even more small legs right at the end. You know, overall, when we are exaggerating and when we are doing something cartoony, we can really push those kind of camera distortions. So I would have done by hand those limbs smaller, making sure that I have like that kind of like nice shape, flying shape. And in terms of the face, I think it's pretty nice. I would just have pushed some things a little more so it's more easy to read. Definitely I would have made sure that I don't have that tangent there. Again, making sure that I am not covering eyes with the nose. I really like what you have there with that, let's say, bringing that lower lid up, just probably a little cleaner. So I would have gone for something, yeah, a little more clean, a little more push, because this is one of the more, let's say, expressive faces of all your piece, right? So you really wanted to make sure that this particular face is like super nice, super fun, super clear to read. All right, so yeah, maybe I would have gone a little bit in this direction. Very nice. Woohoo! Nice, this is fun. Pushing maybe a little bit more that mouth. Just a tiny little more. That tongue is fantastic. Good job on that. And maybe clean up a little bit that, let's say that that ear, just to make sure that we have a more clear and clean silhouette. It's a little dirty in this part here. So, you know, just pushing a little bit more those lines, making sure that we can breathe more clearly. Rotating probably the head a little more in that direction so everything is more clean. And that plus this particular note here where probably face could have been a little bigger, more in this part, that would have been like nice and more fun. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I had a lot of fun with this. The sense of timing that you have in general is great. And then we finish the mambo there. Very nice, well-worked context too, like that when you finish coming in from this side and coming back from this works fantastic. So very well done here. And this comes back to what we already mentioned here. So that would be basically it. Just pushing a little bit more clarity and appeal in some of the key pieces and some of the key poses that you already have. Though, as I started saying, I think that what you already achieved is beautiful, is fun, and it's entertaining, and that's basically what you have to do most of the time. So I hope that these notes help somehow for you in the future, in the upcoming shots. Thank you very much, Julien. You have done a fantastic work. Fantastique! And that's everything for everyone. Thank you very much for watching this review, and I will see you around. Bye!